It is written in the good book, said Monte Cristo, that the sins of the fathers shall fall upon their children to the third and fourth generation. Since God himself dictated those words to his prophet, why should I seek to make myself better than God? Edmund, continued Mercedes, with her arms extended towards the Count, since I first knew you, I have adored your name, have respected your memory. Edmund, my friend, do not compel me to tarnish that noble and pure image reflected incessantly on the mirror of my heart. Edmund, if you knew all the prayers I have addressed to God for you while I thought you were living and since I have thought you must be dead. Yes, dead, alas. I imagined your dead body buried at the foot of some gloomy tower, or cast to the bottom of a pit by hateful jailers, and I wept. What could I do for you, Edmund, besides pray and weep? Listen, for 10 years I dreamed each night the same dream. I had been told that you had endeavored to escape, that you had taken the place of another prisoner, that you had slipped into the winding sheet of a dead body, that you had been thrown alive from the top of the Chateau d'If, and that the cry you uttered as you dashed upon the rocks first revealed to your jailers that they were your murderers. Well, Edmund, I swear to you, by the head of that son for whom I entreat your pity, Edmund, for 10 years I saw every night every detail of that frightful tragedy, and for 10 years I heard every night the cry which awoke me, shuddering and cold. And I, too, Edmund, believe me guilty as I was, yes, I, too, have suffered much. Have you known what it is to have your father starve to death in your absence? Cried Monte Cristo, thrusting his hands into his hair. Have you seen the woman you loved giving her hand to your rival, while you were perishing at the bottom of a dungeon? No, interrupted Mercedes, but I have seen him whom I loved on the point of murdering my son. Mercedes uttered these words with such deep anguish, with an accent of such intense despair, that Monte Cristo could not restrain a sob. The lion was daunted, the avenger was conquered. What do you ask of me? Said he, your son's life? Well, he shall live. Mercedes uttered a cry which made the tears start from Monte Cristo's eyes, but these tears disappeared almost instantaneously, for, doubtless, God had sent some angel to collect them. Far more precious were they in his eyes than the richest pearls of Guzarat and Ophir. "Oh," said she, seizing the Count's hand and raising it to her lips, "oh, thank you, Edmund. Now you are exactly what I dreamt you were, the man I always loved." "Oh, now I may say so." "So much the better," replied Monte Cristo, "as that poor Edmund will not have long to be loved by you." Death is about to return to the tomb, the phantom to retire in darkness. What do you say, Edmund? I say, since you command me, Mercedes, I must die. Die? And why so? Who talks of dying? Whence have you these ideas of death? You do not suppose that, publicly outraged in the face of a whole theater, in the presence of your friends and those of your son, challenged by a boy who will glory in my forgiveness as if it were a victory, you do not suppose that I can for one moment wish to live. What I most loved after you, Mercedes, was myself, my dignity, and that strength which rendered me superior to other men. That strength was my life. With one word you have crushed it, and I die. But the duel will not take place, Edmund, since you forgive? It will take place, said Monte Cristo, in a most solemn tone, but instead of your son's blood to stain the ground, mine will flow. Mercedes shrieked, and sprang towards Monte Cristo, but, suddenly stopping, "Edmund," said she, "there is a God above us. Since you live and since I have seen you again, I trust to him from my heart." While waiting his assistance, I trust to your word. You have said that my son should live, have you not? Yes, madam, he shall live, said Monte Cristo, surprised that without more emotion Mercedes had accepted the heroic sacrifice he made for her. Mercedes extended her hand to the Count. "Edmund," said she, and her eyes were wet with tears while looking at him to whom she spoke, "how noble it is of you, how great the action you have just performed, how sublime to have taken pity on a poor woman who appealed to you with every chance against her. Alas, I am grown old with grief more than with years, and cannot now remind my Edmund by a smile, or by a look, of that Mercedes whom he once spent so many hours in contemplating." Ah, believe me, Edmund, as I told you, I too have suffered much. I repeat, it is melancholy to pass one's life without having one joy to recall, without preserving a single hope, but that proves that all is not yet over. No, it is not finished. I feel it by what remains in my heart. Oh, I repeat it, Edmund, what you have just done is beautiful, it is grand, it is sublime. Do you say so now, Mercedes? Then what would you say if you knew the extent of the sacrifice I make to you? Suppose that the Supreme Being, after having created the world and fertilized chaos, had paused in the work to spare an angel the tears that might one day flow for mortal sins from her immortal eyes. Suppose that when everything was in readiness and the moment had come for God to look upon his work and see that it was good, suppose he had snuffed out the sun and tossed the world back into eternal night. Then even then, Mercedes, you could not imagine what I lose in sacrificing my life at this moment. Mercedes looked at the Count in a way which expressed at the same time her astonishment, her admiration, and her gratitude. Monte Cristo pressed his forehead on his burning hands, as if his brain could no longer bear alone the weight of its thoughts. Edmund, said Mercedes, I have but one word more to say to you. The Count smiled bitterly. Edmund, continued she, you will see that if my face is pale, if my eyes are dull, if my beauty is gone, if Mercedes, in short, no longer resembles her former self in her features, you will see that her heart is still the same. Adieu, then, Edmund, I have nothing more to ask of heaven. I have seen you again, and have found you as noble and as great as formerly you were. Adieu, Edmund, adieu, and thank you. But the Count did not answer. Mercedes opened the door of the study and had disappeared before he had recovered from the painful and profound reverie into which his thwarted vengeance had plunged him. The clock of the Invalides struck one when the carriage which conveyed Madame de Mercer away rolled on the pavement of the Champs-Élysées, and made Monte Cristo raise his head. What a fool I was, said he, not to tear my heart out on the day when I resolved to avenge myself. Chapter 90. The meeting. After Mercedes had left Monte Cristo, he fell into profound gloom. Around him and within him the flight of thought seemed to have stopped, his energetic mind slumbered, as the body does after extreme fatigue. "What?" said he to himself, while the lamp and the wax lights were nearly burned out, and the servants were waiting impatiently in the ante-room. "What? This edifice which I have been so long preparing, which I have reared with so much care and toil, is to be crushed by a single touch, a word, a breath.